Hi, Bill.
Hi there, how you doing?
I am doing very well. How about yourself?
I'm doing quite well. I'm getting insulation put into my home, which I am thoroughly excited about.
Oh, that does sound exciting.
And partially subsidized by the Massachusetts government.
The people here at Heritage will be very happy to hear that.
You are currently at the Heritage Foundation, Conn Carroll?
Yes. We can kind of break some news here at Blogging Heads TV. This is my second week here at the Heritage Foundation. I left the hotline on 11/16. I still love those people. They're great. They're great guys. I plan to visit often and already have. But for a variety of reasons, it was time for me to move on, and so I am now here at the Heritage Foundation. And I guess the other news that will be coming out is I was kind of hired to create a Think Progress like blogging entity for the Heritage Foundation, and we hope to launch January 7th. But we're not up and running yet. But I love the B-Heads crowd so much, we decided to go ahead and keep doing these sessions, even though I currently do not have a blogging outlet.
Are you regaling your new colleagues with horror stories from your times in the secular liberal media?
They're all very curious about the hotline and how it works, and most of them are avid readers every day. But when it comes to the villains of the world in the secular media, the hotline is way, way, way down on the list. But we can discuss who's at the top of the list as we move on to our first subject.
What do you want to kick off with?
Well, we just had the CNN YouTube debate Wednesday night, and there's been tons and tons of conservative blogging on that. But I thought we might, kind of start with what you took away from, or what you saw as what the liberals were talking about the most coming out of that CNN YouTube debate. I mean,
and this is something that I have written about with myself, as well as my colleagues at Campaign for America's Future, Rick Perlstein and David Newart. The intense focus on immigration, I think, really has struck a lot of us on the left. They spent about 25 minutes off the bat on that, and that's partially because CNN posed a lot of YouTube questions on the subject. But
3.
You certainly didn't have a lot of hesitation from the candidates to delve into it, and particularly Romney and Giuliani duking it out. And in my personal opinion, I find the focus on it very strange because just in 2006, when a lot of congressional advertising from Republicans focused on immigration, the Latino vote swung to the Democrats by an extra 11 points. It was not offset by any gains in the white vote. So it seems strange you'd want to keep talking about that. And secondly, every Republican plausible nominee has pro-immigration elements to their past records. There's no one with a squeaky clean record from a conservative anti-immigrant standpoint. So they're all just chewing each other up.
Except for maybe Fred Thompson, just to be fair.
Fred Thompson on Fox News last year said we have to work out a deal where the people who are here have, quote, aspirations to citizenship.
Well, you got me beat there. I guess you're right. They're all compromised.
Now, no one's mentioning Fred Thompson's record on this because he's in the wilderness. No one really cares.
Yeah, he's pretty far down on the list of competitors at this point. So, but you're right. All the major players have immigration skeletons, if you will, in their closet.
So I think it's gonna hurt the party in general in their attempts to diversify their base, and I think it's going to hurt these individual candidates because it's making them all seem pandering and unprincipled. So I don't see who wins by having this be such an intense focus.
Well, the biggest thing the conservative bloggers were talking about coming out of the debates were, of course, the Hillary Clinton steering committee, what they're calling a plant, although there is no evidence that the Brigadier General Keith Kerr was at all instructed by the Clinton campaign. But the general during the debate that did pose the gays in the military question to the field, it was revealed pretty early on in the post game show that he was in fact not only on Hillary Clinton's steering committee for gay, lesbian, bisexual, transsexual issues, but he was also on Kerry's steering committee for the same issues. One of the great, kind of new media moments was not during the debate, during the actual YouTube portion of it, but when Bill Bennett was doing the scoring afterwards. As soon as Anderson Cooper went to him, he was able to say, "I'm getting emails already that this person is a Hillary campaign operative."
And this is, we've talked about this in past segments as to who is more influential, liberal bloggers or conservative bloggers, and there's always a premise that somehow liberal bloggers are running laps around conservative bloggers in influence in Washington. And I'm not saying I think liberal bloggers are not influential, but conservative bloggers have their strengths, and they were able to move that onto CNN through a friendly
email,
climate,
apparently.
In a matter of minutes.
Yeah. No, there were posts up at Michelle Malcolm while the debate was still going on, and so the blog reading, the conservative blogging public was tuned in to what the problem was, and we're shooting the right people. In this case, Bill Bennett, the information he needed to immediately start shipping away.
And this is, I still think, no matter what strides liberal bloggers have made, and I think they've made many, there's a much closer communication, I think, between the conservative base and the conservative Republican establishment than there is with liberal bloggers and the Democratic establishments in Washington. I think there's more tension on the left between those things than on the right.
No, I think you're definitely right in that respect. There's it seems to me that the Netroots, the progressives, are kind of a newer movement. They don't have as many established people in Washington that then also have the established voices and name recognition to be the people that are doing post-CNN debate spin. Instead, you have the James Carvilles, Paul Begalas of the world. Whereas on the conservative side, Bill Bennett has been around for years. He's has his own talk radio show, which is in the heart of the conservative movement. So conservatives may have problems moving away from their talk radio base, getting into blogging and the rest of it. But on the other hand, they are kind of more cohesive, so that when rapid reaction, instant reaction is needed. Like in this case, you're able to get emails to Bill Bennett while he's still on the air at CNN.
Now, having said that, I do question the choice of target of conservatives here, why they thought this was the logical point of attack that was going to help their cause to focus on this one question. I don't really understand.
It was not just him. It was, they also had an Obama supporter was one of the other YouTube questioners. An Edwards supporter was another one of the YouTube questioners. Michelle Malkin has a post detailing, going through the YouTube video histories of the people that submitted, showing that a lot of these people were in fact Democratic supporters.
But did you watch the Democratic CNN YouTube debate?
I did. I'm a hardcore political junkie. I have a problem. I've seen them all.
There were questions there. There was one guy that said, "Are you going to raise taxes like Democrats always do?" There was the person who said that how can you be president when Arab countries see women as second-class citizens? If you go to that guy's MySpace page, he supports Giuliani. There was, of course, the famous pro-gun question, "Are you going to take away my baby?" You did not hear any complaining from liberal bloggers or anyone else for that matter that was somehow unfair, that there was a question from someone who would support a Republican candidate or ask a question from a conservative perspective. They're Americans, they're citizens, they're voters, and they have a right to ask questions. So where's the conflict of interest? What's the big deal here?
Well, I think the kind of the hook is that of course with the Hillary Clinton angle, is that this is another example of Hillary Clinton planting people. But I think the larger complaint from conservative bloggers is that the videos chosen were really a caricature of what people on the, as Jonathan Martin, the Politico, said, people on the Upper West Side view as the Republican base. I thought a great moment in the debate was when, after the gun control question, Duncan Hunter shot that YouTube guy down and said, that guy's crazy. I'm a proud NRA member, and one of the first things the NRA teaches you is gun safety, and you don't throw guns around like that guy did in that YouTube clip. It just showed how out of touch CNN was in picking videos that actually did reflect the GOP base. And that Bible question was even worse. That kid looked like Dylan Klebold about to shoot up Columbine, waving a big Bible in front of the camera. It was terrible. It was all those questions, were a cartoon of what liberals think the GOP base looks like. And
you could make that same argument about some of the questions from the Democratic debate also. There are questions that could be seen as left-wing fringe questions. But they were questions that were submitted by actual individuals, and nothing wrong for the candidate to have to face that kind of question and see how that person responds.
I don't know how many people think they're a melting snowman in the Democratic base, but I don't.
Romney sort of tried to make it seem like this was some sort of wacky, insane, silly question that was coming from the left. The snowman question.
The snowman. Maybe I don't think CNN cast that much doubt on global warming. But the example in the GOP debates were just, in my opinion, so much more plentiful, and it was definitely commented upon Politico and other conservative blogs. And definitely more than actually what happened in the debate was what the conservative blogs were talking about afterwards.
I saw a couple of comments, I think, on the corner along your lines that the questions were caricaturing the conservative base.
Yeah.
But it seems like the major amount of emphasis has been on Brigadier General Keith Kerr and the Hillary plant allegation.
Yeah,
not on the conservative side.
That is the juicier hook, without a doubt. Just because you have the Hillary Clinton angle and you already have the established plant story. So that definitely already connects with people. So they're going to lead with that one. It makes more sense.
It's made enough sense that they've gotten a lot of news out of it. They've got a lot of attention out of it. But it seems like the emphasis of you asked some unfair question because it came from someone who supports another candidate. It strikes me as just being very, very defensive and
let me be clear.
Why not just answer the question and move on, which is what the candidates did.
There was lots of debate on the conservative blogs. There was a big tussle between Patrick Ruffini and Hugh Hewitt at Town Hall over whether or not the Republicans should even do this YouTube debate, way back in July after that the Democrats first did theirs. And Hugh's point was that, no, this is the worst possible debate because, since it's a YouTube question, it'll free the mainstream media to ask all kinds of wacky stuff they never would, and be complete, caricature of what it is when we ask unfair questions. And then Patrick Ruffini shot back and said, no, the Democrat, our candidates should be able to answer any question anywhere. So there definitely is a strong sentiment in the conservative blogs. There's a whole Save the Debate campaign with David All, also Robert Bluey, who actually is my new boss here at Heritage. They had a whole Save the Debate website where they said, no, our candidates should be able to answer these questions. And so I don't think the complaint coming out of the debate is that, Republican candidates shouldn't be forced to ask these questions. That's fine with it. It was just the people that they chose to ask the questions were, just very hurtful to the GOP brand.
Well, all right then.
All right. Moving on to the how the candidates actually did themselves. I saw Mike Lux at Open Left, had a post the other day about the danger of Huckabee, and coming out of the debate, Huckabee was just by far the consensus winner among conservative bloggers about the jokes that he told, his answers on immigration, on taking the Bible literally, etc. And I was wondering how you thought Huckabee did and his chances are.
Well, I said in a past segment of ours that Huckabee was the person that I was most afraid of, as from a liberal perspective. I think he'd be the Republican's strongest choice. Not that he doesn't have flaws, but just relatively speaking. And I thought that bore out on Wednesday. Not so much that he did a outstanding job, but I think relative to the other candidates who I think were caught up in a lot of squabbling and getting themselves picked apart by each other. Huckabee at minimum, here's someone who was just sort of edging into the first tier based on recent Iowa polling, starting to get more of attention put upon him, starting to get more of a media spotlight. This was the first major debate since that's happened, and he held his own. He seems much more of a plausible first-tier contender now, whereas if he stumbled, he made some kind of gaffe of some sort, people would revert back to, he doesn't belong in the first tier, what were we thinking, who are we kidding? And he would be an also-ran. So I think he is the winner in that respect. but he does have the spotlight on him now. You're seeing tougher questions about the fair tax. You're seeing tougher questions about his ethical record when he was governor of Arkansas. Questions about his remarks about taxes now versus his record on taxes as governor. So he has a rough road ahead of him, but I still think as far as the debate goes, he comes out ahead.
Yeah, none that really. I mean, I think they had the fair tax question, but all the rest of those issues didn't really come out in the debate. And it was almost as if there were three debates going on. There was the Mitt Romney, Rudy Giuliani rivalry, and then there was the John McCain versus Ron Paul Iraq War rivalry, and then there was Huckabee just sitting pretty. And those three dynamics definitely led to Huckabee doing wonderfully. Rounding out the rest of the field, John McCain also did very well. Anytime you're taking on Ron Paul and
our conservative bloggers, I've asked you this before. After one of the other debates where McCain had his Woodstock quip, and that bloggers seem to enjoy. Conservative bloggers seem to have led the antipathy towards McCain.
Definitely.
But now, and thinking he's not doctrinaire enough, not a true fighter of conservative principles, too willing to pander to the awful liberal media. But now that every other candidate's conservative bona fides are increasingly under question, is McCain gaining any traction in the conservative blogosphere now? Yeah,
I mean, I think in any primary, you're grading on a curve. As one of my law professors said, the great thing about law school is it's like being in the woods and there's a bear coming at you, and the important thing is to remember, you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun your friend. And so, as far as McCain goes, he just has to be, slightly better than the rest of the field. And so while the conservative bloggers definitely have a lot of questions about McCain's instincts on campaign finance reform, on global warming, and the environment, all the rest of these issues, it's still going to be that, Iraq and the war on terror are going to be, big issues in the campaign. And he's really been able to sell everyone on his, conversion to enforcement first on immigration. And, when you have, Romney, converting on everything, and Giuliani has his own, Shakespeare City problems, all of a sudden McCain's struggles on immigration don't look that bad. He seems sincere enough in his, new commitment to enforcement first. So after you factor out all that, it's like a lot of conservative bloggers are looking at McCain and saying, yeah, he's a good option. And
but there's no coalescing around a single candidate in the conservative blogosphere.
No,
yet.
Still not happening. I looked at the Daily Kos put out their new straw poll today, and I saw Obama really rocketing up and getting closer to Edwards. And I've always suspected that the Netroots would eventually coalesce around Obama. Whether or not it'll be in time enough for them to exert what influence they do have to stop Hillary, that's still up in the air. But I think you will see them coalesce on Obama, and I don't think you're going to see the conservative bloggers coalesce around anyone.
Well, I'm not so sure you're going to see that coalescing on the left either. Although, and despite our discussing of it, I would question at this point whether it's going to be that beneficial to a candidate at this stage of the race.
Oh, yeah, no, I think that's what I was saying. I was trying to put as much or as little emphasis on at this stage this late in the game, how much that's going to be worth. I mean, I think if they had been pounding away at Hillary, for months, that'd be a good feather in Obama's cap. But as it is, this late in the game, there's not much more value added they bring to an Obama or Edwards ticket.
And where bloggers have shown their influence in these political races is when they've gone behind a candidate that had been written off by the mainstream media as so it doesn't stand a chance, and shown that person has traction. Howard Dean, Ned Lamont, John Tester, people like that. That helps you in the early stages of a race. What value blogger coalescing is going to happen when you're only a few weeks out, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel as though, at least for the primaries, there's still tons of time to general, but the window of opportunity for bloggers making a difference is almost closed, if not closed already.
This may segues into something we were talking about offline earlier. You did see some blogger criticism on the left of Bill Clinton for saying this week that he had always opposed the Iraq War. Duncan Black, Atrios, comes to mind in particular for pointing that out. Although I think the story might have been broken by TalkingPointsMemo.com. I'm not 100% sure about that.
Yeah, it's either Greg Sargent or I know Matthew Iglesias also has a big axe to grind with the Clinton camp on that. So it was either Greg or Matt.
So what struck me is that I was one of the dozen or so bloggers that were invited to meet with President Clinton last fall, and along with Atrios and others. And I recall when that happened, one of the criticisms that we got was that we were being...
And this bill up in Harlem, right?
It was in his Harlem office. And there was a criticism that we were being manipulated or being bought, that by meeting with us and being feted by him, we're going to be in his camp. We were essentially a cheap date. And I don't think that has borne out at all. You have not seen... the leading lights of the blogosphere, not to say that I'm one of those, rush to Hillary Clinton after that meeting. You're not seeing them, run cover to President Clinton after something like this, which is particularly notable because, a lot of the early bloggers got into it specifically because of the Clinton wars that happened in the 90s and a frustration with the lack of response to a lot of conservative attacks and a disgust with how the Washington media treated Bill Clinton as somehow it had sullied the glorious Washington establishment. People recycle quotes from David Broder, how Clinton trashed the place, that's not his place. They still criticize Sally Quinn. So that is, the foundation of a lot of liberal blogging was a reaction to that. Yet that's not going to exonerate even a former president when he says something that's going to be demonstrably untrue about his past support for the war in Iraq.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with you, but at least on the fact that, the Netroots never were going to be an easy date for the Clintons, I guess I would just challenge, that anyone ever said you guys were. I don't remember a lot of coverage at the time saying that, the Clintons had you guys in their pocket. People can look back at my coverage, Blogometer, see how I covered it.
I think that those sorts of criticisms did not come from, the blogosphere can be cliquey in places, particularly amongst, what you might say are the top-tier bloggers. So I don't think there was a lot of bickering amongst those. I think there was some concern from folks who were outside of that, looking at it from the outside and thinking that this was going to corrupt the whole blogosphere. It's getting too close to the establishment, too close to centers of power. I think there may be some examples of that one could point out. I don't think this is one of them.
No, I think it's definitely part of a larger story of the Clinton camp recognizing early on that bloggers were a force within the party and that they needed a strategy to not co-opt them, but at least a strategy with dealing them and making sure that they didn't go nuclear on Hillary and form a strong anybody but Hillary campaign. And so I think, if you look at those pictures, you can see the internet strategist Peter Dow in those pictures. And it's my understanding, you can set me wrong on this, that he was one of the architects of that meeting.
Oh, absolutely.
And it is part of a larger campaign, of his, which just makes perfect sense to, find common ground with the Netroots, when they can, minimize his differences where they can, try to form relationships that, can soften coverage and reactions they can, and it didn't seem anything sinister to me. It was just classic, Washington constituency building and maintenance, and they've been the most professional of any campaign at it, and they've done a good job, and that meeting was just another example of that.
But when Peter Dow was hired, I do think there was coverage in the Washington traditional media that this was going to be the way that campaigns were going to buy off the blogosphere. They were going to hire their friends, and that would be enough to get their support.
Right. Well, but the obvious criticism there is, they're all going to hire somebody, and they can't all buy off everybody.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, I would just say you ultimately get what you pay for, and I think Peter's one of the better ones and has served Clinton well. But turning back to kind of the original nugget, I did think it was amazing how quickly Matt and Greg and Atrios jumped on Bill for making that claim. and it just pushes you in a time warp, back to a time when prominent Democrats like the at the time former president, now less than 2 or 3 years out, one believed that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, and as Matt points out, Clinton even suggested that Saddam's arsenal was also a terrorist threat, and so it was such a great reminder of just how far we've come in the past almost less than 5 years about how those assumptions have changed.
True, although I think what really sticks in people's craw, and this is one quote that Atreus, one of the older quotes of Bill Clinton's that Atreus pointed out, was when he said, I defended George Bush against criticisms from the left.
Yeah, on Iraq. No, I had that highlighted myself too. I had totally forgotten that quote, and of course that's the great thing about Atreus is that he doesn't. That was I saw that on the blog and I was like, oh my, I can definitely understand how that might make some people upset.
Well, and this is a larger theme. I think your better bloggers have a larger story that they're telling over the course of several years, and one that Atreus is telling is the misguided nature of the Washington establishment, who he's now calling the villagers, protecting their village against what actual people, actual voters say and want, and that stems out of the Clinton wars of the 90s, when the vast majority of the public supported Bill Clinton and did not support impeachment, yet the Washington establishment seemed to side with the impeachers. To see Bill Clinton then side with the villagers, over where liberal activists were and where the majority of people are now, I think that's something that is very frustrating to folks, and he's not going to get a pass on it.
It's true. Did you want to move on to one of other Atreus' favorite targets in the world who had a rough couple of weeks in the blogosphere?
Atreus would say Joe Klein.
I like that. I actually adopted that around the office when I was at the hotline. I tried to perpetrate that. I thought that was a great name for Joe.
Atreus has a way.
He does. I'm a big fan.
But Joe Klein, Time Magazine columnist and blogger now, he had written a column for Time Magazine about the latest FISA bill.
Well, let's be fair here and back up. It wasn't about the FISA bill. There was only one paragraph about FISA. It was a larger critique of Democrats on foreign policy stemming from their debate with the whole what's more important, human rights or national security? And he was building off the Richardson answer, etc. Just point of order there. It was about larger points, but his mistakes were concentrated on
the point of contention is about that bill.
Right.
Where he had said that the Democrats were behind a bill that was going to
the Restore Act.
force the FISA court to have to review every request to wiretap a foreign terrorist suspect, not a U.S. citizen, but a foreign terrorist suspect. Even though there is a clause in the bill that specifically says that it would not do that, bloggers quickly jumped on it. Not fans of Joe Klein in general. Liberal bloggers are not. Glenn Greenwald was the lead on this, who now blogs for Salon.com. And Jane Hampshire over at Fire Dog Lake, after this, actually put in a phone call to the Time Magazine editors asking for a correction, and were initially given the runaround. But after this wouldn't go away, even folks at I believe Harper's Magazine were knocking Klein on it. It started to move beyond bloggers in general.
Yeah, editor and publisher had a scathing piece. Wired, UC Berkeley professor, there's some online media had a very scathing post. Columbia Journalism Review also jumped in.
Time Magazine then responded with a clarification that it wasn't Joe Klein got this wrong. It was Democrats say the bill says this, Republicans say the bill says this, which was wholly unsatisfactory to bloggers when it's very plain what's in the bill. And when the Chicago Tribune reprinted the Time Magazine piece, and bloggers were mad about that, the Chicago Tribune reprinted a correction that was a true correction, that this column said the bill says X, it does not. So it has not gone away. Joe Klein has still been under a lot of fire over this, and it's an example. Again, it's an example of how bloggers can influence media and put pressure on them. But I think it's also telling if you contrast that with, say, what happened with conservative bloggers over the CNN debate. The choice of targets. What is motivating people? There's a frustration on the left that Washington reporters take things that Republican congresspeople or operatives say and treat them as fact blindly without looking at the underlying facts, and that's a source of consternation. From a conservative perspective, CNN was characterizing the right in a way they didn't like, they felt, and therefore they wanted to ding them on something. But in my perspective, I think their choice of targets seemed odd to me.
Well, I have 2 points. First, Joe Klein wrote one article in Time, and let's not forget he's a self-professed liberal. And second of all, the CNN debate was the most watched debate ever. So I think it was a little bit more damage. But on the larger issue, and you can't pay me enough money to defend Joe Klein, and with a little law background myself, he was definitely inartful in his wording of what was in there, and used citizens when he should have said persons, and definitely could have explained more about what his criticism was in the bill. However, I would say that reading through the lefty blogs on this issue, you just do not get a full understanding of what the debate actually is. And on that point, I think Joe Klein does have a point about recognizing the nuances that are within this bill. I'll put a link to it on the side, but back in August when they were rebating the I think it was the Protect America Act they called it last time, Slate had a great discussion between Orrin Kerr and Marty Lederman and some other ex-DOJ officials, about what was at stake in this NSA authorization bill. And there's even a great Blogging Heads session about it. We can put that link on too. And basically what the issue is that everybody agrees that the NSA and the intelligence community should be able to listen in on whatever foreign-to-foreign calls they want to, and everybody agrees that the NSA and the intelligence community should not be able to listen in to you and me doing Blogging Heads here over the phone. The problem comes in when I am talking to my friends in London or Italy. When and when not can the NSA target foreign to national and national to foreign targets. And the problem with the technology is that there's the line in the Democratic bill basically says nothing in this bill should be interpreted to say that it's going to target foreign to foreign, etc. The problem is you can't just wave a magic wand and have the NSA, when it intercepts everything, know what is foreign to foreign and foreign to United States to United States anymore. The information systems, whether it's wireless or email or everything else, just aren't routed that way. So the more complicated issue is, what are the filters that the NSA and the intelligence agency can use in order to determine, what is a foreign to domestic target, and once they have a foreign target, then what communications can again go into and the rest of it. And I think Joe Klein was making the point that when you say you're trying to protect, that the Restore Act, all it does is protect people from government spying on person-to-person calls in the U.S. That's not really what the debate is about. And I think when we do get into the general election season, you are going to see organizations, conservative organizations, maybe even like the Heritage Foundation, making the case to the American people that what this debate about is when do you want the government listening in on calls from overseas into the United States? And so there's going to be some trade-offs as to what you do listen to and what you don't. And I think the left as well as the right would be better served, doing the hard work that Joe Klein did not, into figuring out what the nuances of this debate are.
Well, the impetus from the liberal blogosphere on this issue was not on the finer points of warrantless wiretapping. There's been focus on that in other areas. But the main source of concern here was in the course of Joe Klein making his point, he said something that was demonstrably false.
Right.
He said that the bill required FISA court approval of every call that was going to be of every wiretap that was targeting a foreign terrorist, which is flatly wrong. And that was the heart of his argument in the column, which he's now tried to dismiss as being a minor technical matter and beside the point. That's the thing that.
Oh no! No one can pay me enough to defend Joe Klein or his legal reasoning.
And so, a lot of liberal blogging focuses on media criticism and media portrayals and how Democrats get painted as reflexively soft on national security because of very sloppy work like that, which in this case appears to be spoon-fed by Representative Pete Hoekstra, based on what Hoekstra said in his National Review column this week. I agree with you that having a full-out discussion of how the technical matters of defending the nation against terrorists is a healthy thing for both the left and right to have. That wasn't the source of consternation from the Joe Klein article. The source was saying something that was factually inaccurate and not owning up to it.
Oh, yeah, no, I guess I disagree a little bit. That was, of course, the fact that, Joe Klein shouldn't be writing about legal matters, it is a fair point, but I think the, left would have been equally disappointed with the article. Again, if you look at the article itself, and we can link to it, the FISA portion of it is really, just, one or two paragraphs of a much longer article. And it was something that they were able to latch on to discredit his title of the point, which is that as the general election season, rolls around, Democrats should start getting ready for, what the Republicans' attacks are going to be on national security, which I thought was a fair point for the rest of the article.
I would not be surprised if liberals would not have appreciated Joe Klein's overarching point, regardless.
Yeah, okay.
And this is a larger frustration with Joe Klein, the way Washington media is structured. He is treated like a liberal pundit.
Well, because he is.
Calls himself, except he spends a lot of time undermining fellow liberals and Democrats. In this case, with factually inaccurate information, and that is not unique to Joe Klein. There are many people. Almost any Meet the Press roundtable kind of situation where the person designated as the liberal pundit is not especially liberal, and certainly doesn't treat. Whereas the conservative pundit on that same roundtable is going to act like a full-fledged member of the conservative team.
Well, let's not get carried away on that point.
It's a main sore point for many liberal bloggers, which is why they focus on media criticism so much.
You tune into MSNBC pretty much any day, and you'll have Patrick Buchanan in there as the conservative talking point guy, but he's he's not with the party on trade. We all forget that he ran against Bush in 2000. He definitely has his followers / own set within the conservative movement, but I think both sides can look to the people that get the most bookings and say, oh God, that's our spokesman on this issue, and cry foul.
I think the Pat Buchanan example is far more an anomaly with conservative pundits than it is for your average liberal pundit is not someone who is generally there's such a sense in the mainstream media that we're going to be attacked for liberal bias all the time. What can we do to disprove that? So we'll have someone who is on the left who is sort of halfway liberal, who spends time criticizing his or her own, or have just regular journalists. You'll have like a David Gregory on a Meet the Press panel who is a journalist, not a partisan or activist by any stretch, and that will be considered, we had a liberal here to counteract Byron York or Cato Byrne or what have you. That happens all the time. And
I will say this.
I don't think the same is true on the other side.
Yeah, I will say this, and it ties back to the kind of the point we both agreed on earlier, is that the elites within the conservative movements that get the bookings, the Bill Bennett's, the Cato Byrnes, and the Byron Yorks, are kind of closer and tighter to the conservative movement and the people that are blogging, etc. So you're right. There is less unhappiness with our spokesman at the time than there is on the Netroots and their unhappiness with who are the kind of liberal spokesmen that are getting the bookings in this town on their side.
If we can segue to another topic, the most recent liberal blogger outrage, media-wise, was the Washington Post story on Thursday.
Obama, and what was the story about?
That's a great question.
The big question when I saw that story on the Washington Post was, what's the news peg here?
Well, there's no peg at all.
No, there's not.
But the story was that Obama's Muslim ties fuels for rumors. I may be butchering the exact wording of the headline.
It was foes use Obama's ties to fuel rumors about him.
Right. Now, Obama had a Muslim grandfather on his father's side. His actual father was an atheist, and his mom didn't practice any religion at all. And I believe his stepfather was Muslim also.
No, it's not. I thought his stepfather was the one he spent time in Indonesia with.
Okay.
But I believe that he was also atheist. But that he did, spend time in Indonesia, which is a Muslim country.
Right.
And I think that's the extent of his Muslim ties.
Right. And there, of course, was the madrasa fabrication that
right.
He attended school at a madrasa in Indonesia.
But
Obama himself is a Christian, attends church at Trinity in Chicago. There are several clergy that attest to that. It's not a secret. His pastor has been very close to him. And when the madrasa charge came out earlier, CNN went to the school in Indonesia and thoroughly debunked the story. And yet, this Washington Post, and there is some news, I think, in that rumors continue to persist.
Yeah, but that was all so weak. It was like, there's some stuff on the internet and an email. There was no quantifying of it. There was no quoting from this, internet or these emails. There was no, there was a story earlier this week in The Nation, I forget who wrote it, that was kind of a more, case study of, rumors getting circulated on email. And, that at least had some reporting on it. This really didn't.
That's true. But I think there's some potential news that, Chris Hayes did a great piece in The Nation about the long history. About. I'm sorry?
I thought I just mentioned that piece, although I forgot I wrote it.
I'm sorry. Long history of, right-wing email rumors and the difficulty in tracing the origin of these things. It was a very well-done piece. There's some news value in that.
Although, if I can make one point there, I would hardly say that it's just a right-wing phenomenon. Instapoint has done some great work about the problem of 9/11 truther myths and stories that get forwarded through email. And
9/11 conspiracy stuff transcends ideology, I find. In fact, the guy you talked about at the top of our segment, the YouTube questioner. Who asked the King James question. You go to his MySpace page. He's also a 9/11 conspiracist who supports Ron Paul and Tom Tancredo.
That's my point. Is that 9/11 conspiracy theories in general do transcend ideological bounds, and Instapoint has talked about it a lot. That and this article is another example of that. Is that the problem that what makes these rumors so insidious and evil is that they just never go away. And in an online world, it makes it even harder to kill these things off, because when people link to these stories and the rest of it, they don't always check out the date. People think stuff is new, and the people at Popular Mechanics can tell you they keep having to respond to the same stuff over and over again.
Well, that's supposedly what the traditional media is all about. That they have editors and fact checkers, and they debunk things and keep people honest. Yet this story was, there are rumors floating out there that say Obama's Muslim. Obama denies them. I don't know. That was the nut of the story. I mean, they even cited, Snopes.com, which is the gold standard in debunking internet rumors. It cited Snopes saying that they had a piece about these Obama Muslim emails, and neglected to mention that Snopes found them to be false. So it was truly abhorrent reporting. And the reporter himself has had to respond because there was enough blogger outrage that they felt it was necessary. but he's not really making any apologies for it. He seems to be arguing, as he said it I believe in an email to TalkingPointsMemo.com, that I talked about the falsehoods. And this was Greg Sargent at Talking Points that said, "Well, you didn't call them falsehoods in the article."
Right. I think the headline says it all. It was foes use Obama's ties to fuel rumors about him. So you look at that logically, and it's asserting the truth of the ties, and then saying there are rumors.
Right. Which gives the rumors more legitimacy and credence.
Right. It was just a botch from the beginning to the end. I do have one theory about the beginning of the story or why the story came now, because like we said at the top, there was no news peg, there was nothing new about this story, there was no this rumor came out or there's some new facet of this rumor. It just kind of showed up on the Washington Post front page for some reason. My theory is that this is kind of more fallout from the Clinton and Obama back and forth over Obama's international experience. In that, Obama is trying to make the argument that, his international name, his name is, Barack Obama, not being Joe Smith, has appeal, his biracial history. And then he also makes as part of his case, is that he does have a Muslim Kenyan grandfather. And that he did spend time in Indonesia. And that he is trying to build this as a positive, as an appeal, and showing that he has experience. And so I think this article was kind of like, okay, yeah, that's the case he's making, and that's the appeal. Is there any drawback to that? And that's my theories about what this article was addressing. But it was absolutely terribly done.
Yeah, I mean that may be the impetus for the piece, but I would agree with you that the product is still journalistically terrible. But I think it's also very interesting that Obama is handling it in this way. He is not responding by saying, "Ooh, I'm not a stinky Muslim." He is not shying away from talking about what ties he has in his family to Islam and his experience growing up for a time in a Muslim country. The quote that's in the story that I also found interesting, where he said, "If I was a Muslim, I would tell you," not, "Oh my God, I would never be an awful Muslim."
Right. So, well, I don't think anyone today is going to say they're going to be an awful Muslim.
Well, Mitt Romney's gone pretty close.
Yeah. Well, we can save that for another episode. But right now, I think we beat up CNN, we beat up Joe Klein, we beat up the Washington Post. I think we can call it a day.
Okay. Well, congratulations on your new gig.
Thank you. And January 7th, everyone, look out for the as yet unnamed Heritage blog.
All right. We got to hold you to that.
Sounds good. And so until next week, I'll talk to you later, Bill.
Okay, take care.
Okay, bye.